So in this episode, we're going to talk about how to create a form inside a website. And before we actually start creating the form, I'd like to talk to you guys about what exactly you can do with a form, or at least what it's used for typically on a website. So if we were to take an example here, if I were to go to a website that has a contact form at the bottom, we need to type in your name, your email, a message, and then click send. That's an example of a form. Another example is if you go to a website that has a login system and you can type your username and password and then click login. That's also a form. So what I'm trying to point at here is that even though a form is written using HTML and CSS, a lot of times you're going to need to know a little bit of PHP or JavaScript to actually do something with a form. Now, having said that, don't skip this video, because once you do actually get to the point where you need to use this stuff, it's very valuable to know this ahead of time. Okay, you need to know how to create a form before you actually need to start using it. Having said that as well, back when I was studying and I had to learn about, contact forms inside HTML and CSS, it really wasn't that difficult to Google how to create the PHP code for a contact form and use it together with the form I created inside HTML. It really doesn't take that long time to do. So you don't have to know PHP and JavaScript to actually do something with the forms. A lot of times you can Google your way to answers. So having said that, let's actually go ahead and create something. So underneath our table box, let's go ahead and copy our subsection called table box and paste it below here. After we pasted it down here, we're going to go ahead and change the name from table-box to form-box. And then we're going to go ahead and delete the table in here because we don't need that for our form. I'm going to save it. I'm going to go to my style sheet. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy my styling for the table-box, paste it at the bottom, and just simply change the name. Now, we're not going to change any styling, and you could argue that it would be easier just to keep the styling as table-box even though it's inside a form. And you could do that. But I'd just like to have a different styling for each section, even though it's the same styling. So going back to our index file, we can actually start creating the form inside our wrapper. So in here, the way we create a form is by writing out the tags form. And we need to have opening and closing tags. In between here is where we create all the different inputs that we need inside a form, and like the button and that kind of thing. So let's take an example. If I want to have a text area that I can write in, like a short text area where I can type my name, like my first name and last name, and maybe if I want a, like a optional choice where where you can choose one or two answers by checking it off, you can also add that inside a form. And if I want to add something like a text area, like a huge text area, we can also add that into a form. So if I were to go ahead and start out by writing opening tag, input, we can actually start creating an input, which is a text area inside this form. So we're going to say input space. Then we need to write what kind of type of input it is, because there's many different types. We're going to set this one equal to quotation marks and set it to text. So right now, we're saying we're creating an input, and it's a text input, meaning we can type text in here. After this, we're going to go ahead and give this one a name. Now, the name works kind of the same way as when we give a name to a HTML tag, for example, with classes and IDs. The only reason not the only reason, but one of the main reasons we use names is so that we can pinpoint which input we're talking about. So inside this input, we're going to say name equal to quotation marks, and the first one we're going to set to first, as in first name. After this one, we can just go ahead and close it, and that's simply all we need. Now, I need to mention also, you don't have to write first. It doesn't stand for first name. You can write whatever you want in here. I'm just writing first because that makes sense to me, okay? So you guys can write first name or whatever you feel like in there. So having written this, let's actually go ahead and copy paste it below, like so. Save it and go ahead and look at it inside our browser. So as you guys can see, we do actually get two input fields down here. And the thing about these is that right now, if a user were to go to my website and see these text inputs, they wouldn't actually know what to type in here. Like what do we want them to type? So there's two ways we can include some text in here to tell them. The first one is called value, and value is typically not used to put inside a text area like this to show people, but let's just go ahead and write one out. So we're going to write value equal to quotation marks, and we're going to set this one to first name. Then I'm going to go ahead and go down to the next one we have down here, and I'm going to go ahead and change the name to last because it's the last name we want down here. And then instead of value, we're going to say placeholder, like so, equal to quotation marks, and we're going to set this one to last name. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you guys the difference between using value and placeholder. If you go to the browser and refresh the website, you guys will notice that the first name, if I type inside the text area, I can actually delete the first name text in here and write on top of it, or like write with it, which is not really ideal for what we want to use it for. But the last name, which was the placeholder, we can actually just click in here and then it's grayed out the text in here, and when I start writing, it just simply deletes whatever's in there. So having said that, the value is typically not used for this kind of thing. The value is used when you want some kind of preset value you need to send on into whatever, script, like in PHP or JavaScript, that has to handle this form. So when you want something to happen to the form, you're telling it what the value needs to be. So we're going to go ahead and just replace the placeholder up here, not replace the placeholder, but replace the value with the placeholder, save it, and refresh our browser. Because this is what we want to have. After this, I'm going to go ahead and go on the next line after our second input. I'm going to add a break, which I don't know if we talked about before, but you just simply write it out by writing BR inside the HTML tags. And then you get a break where it jumps down to the next line. After we have the break, let's go ahead and include another kind of input. So let's write opening code, input. And instead of setting the type as text, let's go ahead and set it as something called radio. So I'm going to write radio. And afterwards here, I'm going to go ahead and give it a name. Now, the name here we can just go ahead and call gender, for example. So now we're going to write where you get two options. Either you can write male or female, and you have to choose one of them, or at least, you can only choose one of them when you submit this form. So after the name, we're going to go ahead and say space. Then we're going to set the value equal to quotation marks, and the first one is going to be male. Now, after we close off this one, once I do actually submit the form, and if I have chosen this input, it's going to send the answer to the handler as male. But if I were to go ahead and save this and refresh my browser, you guys will notice that we don't actually get any text outside this check mark I can click on down here. I don't know if you guys can see, it's kind of tiny, but there's a check mark down here, or like a circle I can click on. And it doesn't actually tell me why I need to click this circle. So going into my code, I'm going to go ahead and after my input, write male, save it, refresh my browser, and as you guys will see, we now get male. And I can actually see, oh, okay, yeah, I am a male. So I'm going to click this one. Now, we're going to go ahead and include another kind of radio button because, why would we only have one if we need some options? So I'm going to go ahead and save this one, or like copy it. And then below, I'm going to go ahead and write another break because we need to jump to the next line. And then I'm going to go ahead and paste it in once more. Then I'm going to change the value to female and just simply write female on the other side as well. Now you might be asking, how does it know that these two inputs go together? Well, that's because we have the same name inside here. Both of them are called gender, which is why it knows that there can only be one of these chosen. So if I go in and refresh my browser, you guys will notice that we get male or female. If I were to click male and then go down and click female, you can see that the little tap icon, or like the little circle in there, changes. We can't have both of them chosen at the same time. So now we have this one. We can actually start creating something like a button. So underneath here, actually let's go ahead and create a text area first. If we want to create a text area, we just simply write text. Sorry, we need to open up the code. Write text area. We close it off here, and then need to close the text area as well. Like so. Then we're going to go ahead and write, in here we're going to give it a name because we want some kind of name for the text area. So we'll say name equal to quotation marks, and then we can say message in case I want to write some kind of message. Save this, and then underneath here, we're gonna go ahead and create a button. So I'm gonna go ahead and say button. And you want to make sure you have an opening and closing tag as well, just like the text area. And inside the button, we're gonna write type equal to quotation marks, and then just go ahead and say text. Sorry, not text, submit. Because that tells it that once we click this button, it's gonna submit the form. So you might be asking, why didn't we include a type inside our text area? That's because it's already expecting it to be text, so we don't actually need that. So if I were to go ahead and save and refresh my browser, you guys will notice we get a text area. But wait, we do actually need to include a break because we want it to jump down to the next line, like so. And just kind of include it after the second input for the radio type and after the message text area box. Refresh again. You guys will notice we have a text area box that's a lot larger than these, and we can actually go ahead and drag it to become very big. We can also eliminate this with styling, so don't worry about this if you don't like it. And we get a button down here, but right now the button doesn't say anything inside of it, so let's go ahead and include that. So going inside our code, in between the button tags, let's say submit. Like so, save it, and refresh our browser. So now we get submit inside the button. So what we can do with this form is, like I said, once we do actually hit submit, we want it to do something, because right now if I were to go ahead and click submit, it just jumps back to the front page. So what we want to do here is we do actually want to tell it what it needs to do. So if we go back into the code and go up into our form tag, at least the opening form tag, and say space, we need to tell it two things. First of all, we need to tell it what kind of action we want it to take, and we need to tell it what kind of method we want it to use. So the action is simply pointing towards another document or another script that needs to handle the form, that needs to make it do something. And the method tells it how we want to pass it on. So first of all, let's go ahead and write action equal to quotation marks, and then say we want it to go to a web page called, I don't know, let's just go ahead and call it form.php. Now remember, like I said, it has to be a PHP script or JavaScript script that handles the form. So right now, I'm just going to go ahead and pass it to a PHP form, which we haven't created yet. We're going to create it together. Afterwards, I have to tell it how I want to submit it. And now, I could explain what the method does, and I will actually do it, but it might not be as relevant for you right now, but let's just go ahead and write it out. So you write method equal to quotation marks, and we're going to go ahead and write post in here. Now you don't have to write in big letters like I did here. You can also write it with, uncapitalized letters, but that's just how programmers usually do it. Now, there's two different methods. You can either write post or you can write get. The difference between the two is, well, it's kind of hard to explain without making it too complicated for you guys since you just start out with HTML and CSS. But once you submit the form, it's going to go to the web page or like the file we create called form.php, and it's going to take all these values we typed in here. If I were to go ahead and type in my contact form here, if I were to write my first name, last name, mail, and write some kind of comment down here like a message and click submit, you guys will notice that up inside our URL up here, we do actually get index.html question mark first, which is the name of our first input, equal to whatever I just wrote in there, and last equal to whatever I wrote in there, and gender equal to male, and message is equal to whatever I wrote in there. So these things up here is going to be passed, or at least all the values once we actually submit the form are going to be passed using the URL. And then inside our form.php, we're going to go up into the URL and get this information and use it for something. That's how you pass on information in a form. So the post and the get method simply states that if we use post method, then the browser won't actually be able to tell up in our URL what the information is. If we use a get method, then we'll write it out clearly as daylight what exactly we typed in here. So for security reasons, if you were to write in a username, password, and that kind of thing, you want to use a post method because it's safe. If you use a get method, you typically deal with information that's not really that important in case hackers get their hand of it. So right now, it's not really that important that we have all these. So let's just go ahead and write get. That way you guys will also be able to see what we actually get passed on. So after having done this, we have a contact form. Or at least not a contact form, but we have some kind of form. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a new file called form.php, and we're going to do something in here. Again, like I said, this is the HTML part. You don't technically need to know this stuff. This is PHP we're getting into here, but I just feel like you guys should know about it. And I know this episode is getting a bit long, so let's just go ahead and jump into it. So I created a new file here. I'm gonna go ahead and save it inside my root folder as form.php. I'm gonna save it. And now, when I click submit, it's gonna go to this site, or at least this file, and I need to tell it to do something. So we need to open up our PHP code by writing the opening arrow, question mark, PHP, then go down a couple of lines and then write question mark, closing arrow. And whatever goes in between here is going to be PHP code. So the first thing we're going to write is, first of all, we need to go and get the information inside the URL. Let's actually go ahead and submit a form here. So if I were to go back to my front page, like so, go down to the bottom, and fill in this contact form. I'm gonna write Daniel as my first name. I'm gonna write Nielsen as my last name. I'm gonna write I'm a male. Then I'm gonna say, hi, this is a message. And then I'm gonna submit it. And now you'll notice that we get into a completely new clean form, or at least a clean page called form.php with all the information I just typed in inside the browser. Or inside the URL. So now we need to actually go fetch these informations inside the URL. So I'm going to go into my code, inside my PHP code. I'm going to go ahead and say $. Then I'm going to go ahead and give it some kind of name. What we're doing right now is we're creating a variable, and we're going to go ahead and create it and call it first, as in first name. I'm going to set it equal to whatever we get from the URL. So I'm going to go ahead and say $_get, because we used the get method, brackets, single quotes, and then I'm going to go ahead and write the name of what we just wrote the name of inside our input in our form. In this case, it was called first. I'm going to close it, and then I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste this one down a couple of times. For the last name, then we're going to get one for our male or female. Then we're going to get one for the text area. So here, I'm going to go ahead and change my variable name to last on the second one. As well, it was called the same thing in our name, so I'm just going to call last inside here. Down on the next line, we're going to go ahead and say, well, we had a gender variable. I'm going to go ahead and just paste gender inside my get method over here, because that's what we named it as well. Then on the last one, we're going to go ahead and write message, and just simply write message in here as well. So now we have each information from the URL, and we named it these names over here on the left side. So now we can actually use these for something. So if I want to go down on my next line and I actually want to write out what it was we typed in the last window, or like in the last page when we filled in the form, I can go ahead and write echo. And then I'm going to go ahead and echo out either one of these variables we created up here. I'm just going to go ahead and take the first one, which is the last name, save it. If I refresh my browser now, you guys will notice that we get this gibberish. And the reason we do that is because once you use PHP code, you do actually need to set up something called a server, or you need to set up some servers to actually see it inside your browser. And right now, we don't actually have it set up. But if I were to actually have a server set up, I didn't actually think about this ahead of time. If I were to have a server set up, it would actually print out Daniel inside here and not all this gibberish. So let me just go ahead and zoom in for you guys so you can actually see. This is what's written out. It would actually say Daniel. And if I were to just go ahead and go back in here and just echo, Daniel, Then I'm gonna go ahead and include my last, my gender, my message. It would actually print out all the information we wrote from the last page. So you might be asking, what can we use this for? Well, let's say I want to send an email, which is done by a function in PHP called mail, like so. I can actually start typing in either, well, we need to type in who it needs to be sent to. We need to type in what the subject is of the mail. We need to type in the message, and we need to type in headers, like, who is it from, and that kind of thing. So, using these information we just got from the form, we can actually pass it in here and tell, who sent it and who we're sending to and what is the message and that kind of thing, and then send an email to some person. So that's essentially what a form does, at least one of the many, many, many hundreds and thousands of ways you can use a form using PHP and JavaScript. This is one of the ways you can use a form. And I'm kind of sad about not having set up a server so I can actually show you guys this. But if you guys want to learn how to do this stuff, right now, as I'm making this episode, there's not a PHP lesson available inside the website that you guys might be watching it on, or my YouTube channel. And at some point in the future, I will have all kinds of PHP tutorials. So this will actually start making sense if you guys follow that one. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, this is how you create a simple form. Let's actually go ahead and refresh our page. Here we go. This is how you create a simple form and do something with it. I hope you guys enjoyed, even though, like I said, it is a bit complicated to use this only using HTML and CSS. And I will see you guys next time.